The Hot Stove, brought to you by Ford, powered by you.
Shots are 21-17 for Detroit. It's 1-1 at the second intermission in this critical fourth game. With Pierre Lebrun here at the Igloo, and you can see Al Strachan and Scott Morrison in Toronto. Scott, right to you with, I think, the biggest scoop of the ones we have here. Go ahead.
Well, it's interesting, Ron, that we found out that Anaheim has now been asked 3 times for permission to talk to Brian Burke, twice by the Leafs, the first time by Gord Kirk, then Larry Tannenbaum, and now the most interesting one, perhaps, Jerry Bruckheimer, who wants to put a team in Las Vegas, which suggests to me that we might have expansion on the horizon, although Gary Bettman says that's not going to happen, or perhaps down the road relocation.
Yeah, it probably is going to happen. And, you know, Dave Nonis was supposed to be the guy coming to Toronto to lure Brian Burke in there. And now, don't be surprised if it's the other way around. If Dave Nonis, because he's not getting any satisfaction from the Leafs, ends up going to Anaheim and joining Brian Burke in the near future.
Well, there's a standing offer there for a pro scouting job for 1 year or 2 years.
Maybe a bit more than that.
In Ottawa, we know that they've interviewed Bob Hartley and Craig Hartsburg, as Strack had predicted they would. And they're also going to do 2 or 3 more interviews, Ron. They're not done yet. One of the names that's surfacing, although I wasn't able to confirm, is Peter DeBoer, who seems to be on everyone's list after his great season behind the Kitchener bench. But one report out there is that they're waiting for the Tampa situation to clear up to see if John Tortorella indeed does get fired. But I was told today that's not true. The Tampa situation has no bearing on what Brian Murray's trying to do behind the bench.
Incidentally, Cliff Fletcher's here at the game, fellas. So have you heard anything on Matt Sundin's status?
I believe Scotty has it, yes.
Well, I was just going to say, first of all, speaking of coaches, that Cliff had a meeting with Ron Wilson, late of San Jose, yesterday. And once they get through the general managers' meetings on Monday in Detroit, there will be a second meeting. He appears to be number 1 on their list. They have a list, but he's the go-to guy at this point, and the interest seems to be mutual. As far as Sundin, we know that he had dinner with Cliff on Thursday night, and the sense was there was no timetable given for when he was going to say if and when he was going to come back. The sense is he is going to play this season, but it's not a lock that it's Toronto. And what happens next is Toronto's going to have to come with an offer, and it's going to have to be a big one for $7, $8, $9 million. If it's the status quo in terms of money, then it's probably not going to happen with the Leafs.
That Tampa thing is going to come up at the governor's meeting in June 17th, and the word around the league is that that's going to be a pretty stormy one. There's a lot of owners who are not happy with Gary Bettman. In fact, it's almost like the early days of the beginning of the demise of John Ziegler. At the lower end, the people who don't have the big money are saying, you know, you shut this league down. We could have had like a $45 million salary cap. All right, that was the number more or less. And you shut it down, and now we're at a $40 million minimum, not a cap. And then the other end, the people who are making all the money say, we're sick of supporting these teams, shipping out $10 million a year of our money down to the southern states, and they're unhappy. So it's going to be a busy time for Gary.
But a governor told me today that the big revenue teams are happy about the big revenue, and if they can keep spending, then they'll happily ship some more money down to avoid another lockout. They don't want to shut it down.
Well, they don't want the lockout, no, but they're not happy.
I want to add on Sundin, apologies for not jumping in, Scott. They could trade him. That's one of the options where both sides could save face. If they trade his rights to the team that Sundin wants to agree on a deal with, let's say Montreal, then they can get maybe a first-round pick. It's what Philly did with Nashville last year with Timonen and Hartnell. The league says it's okay.
All right, let's pick up
a first round. They got a first-round pick back in that deal, and that is the sense, Pierre, that if the Leafs come in with a token offer, the next question will be, can we trade you?
Paul Maurice's name, what's going on in San Jose? Let's deal with those two first here.
Well, Paul Maurice had a conversation with Jacques Martin. The Leafs were asked permission and were granted it, obviously. And another name that's going to come up in Florida is that of Perry Pern, who is an assistant with the Rangers and formerly associated with Jacques Martin in Ottawa. And as far as San Jose goes, Joe Quenneville has been in for an interview. There might be a bit of a money issue there, which suggests that they might look at the next tier of candidates. And I understand that San Jose has also asked for and received permission to talk to Kevin Dineen. They'd like to bring him in as an associate coach, and he has a relationship dating back to Hartford with Joel Quenneville.
Well, Florida is in its usual messed up state that we've come to expect from that dysfunctional franchise. The story is that, you know, that 4-year contract extension for Jacques Martin, in fact, all it was the same money spread over 4 years. So it's a contract extension, no money extension, and he's desperate. I guess he's telling people that Olli Jokinen will definitely not be back by the time the training camp starts. And he looks bad about the Chad Kilger deal in Toronto. You know, they made that deal, and they specifically waived the need for Kilger to have a medical. So then when Kilger got down there, he said, by the way, I got personal issues and I'm not playing, and the deal had to stand.
But Jacques going to get all the same money for half the job. That's the kind of
Well,
contract
over a
you're trying
longer
to
term, though.
negotiate.
Yeah, but it's longer term.
That's like Don Waddell's deal.
Yeah.
What's going to happen in Atlanta? Is he going to bring somebody in?
Well, Don's taken on the responsibilities to run the arena, the basketball team, and the hockey team. Doesn't want to give up the hockey team, and it appears he won't have to. He's going to need some help. There's no doubt about that. And he's starting his coach search in the next week. And I know that John Anderson is one guy on his list once the Calder Cup is over.
And I saw, Ron, your interview with Gary, the entertaining at the beginning there, and Gary sort of dodged one question of yours, or it was short, regarding ESPN. Now, I remember earlier in the year we said that ESPN was interested in getting hockey next year, the NHL, and it fell apart because they wanted exactly the same thing that NBC has. But the feeling is that next year, that there will be a bid on it, not for this coming season, but for the following season, that these two teams will bid, and there will actually be some money come into hockey for hockey.
But there's a bit of a catch there because Versus has an exclusivity for cable through 2011, so they're going to have to be paid off in some form in this if that goes to
The one thing
pass.
that was glaringly apparent when you're down here, versus $70 million a year divided 30 ways is $2 million for a player. It's just not worth it not to be on ESPN. So I think Gary Bettman's got to figure out a way. How about the GM's meetings on Monday?
The buzz item will be no-touch icing. We said it would be
Really?
a
Because there was a moratorium, I thought. They were supposed to talk about
they're
it.
going to tackle it again. And the competition committee on June 13th, the day after the NHL awards, the players are going to arrive, I think, with a mandate from the PA to push this hard. They really want to get this in the game for next year. Speaking of the PA, by the way, they have grieved that new rule change that Coley Campbell brought in with the stick with Sean Avery in the second round of the playoffs. They felt it should have gone through the competition committee before it became a rule, and that is in the CBA.
Last word, gentlemen. You got anything there?
I was just going to say they also grieved the $500,000 fine that Scott Niedermayer got for not going to training camp, and there's a resolution coming on that matter, and it appears he's not going to have to pay it.
Yeah, and the one, too, that they had last week when they said if you get in an altercation in the pregame warm-up, that you lose a player.
Our thanks to Al Strachan, Scott Morrison, Pierre Lebrun. When we come back, Kelly Rudy, Craig Simpson, and some interviews for you next.
The Hot Stove.
The Hot Stove.
Brought to you by Ford. Powered by you.